Good afternoon. I'm Senator Gary Daniels from District 11. Today we'll be holding a meeting of the Senate Finance Committee. Before we get started, I'll read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting we are holding is in compliance with the right to know law. As chair of the Senate Finance Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-4 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom or YouTube and via phone by following the directions and links provided on the General Court website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remotesenate@leg.state.nh.us or call 603-271-6931. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, it will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes taken during the meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Finally, let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When each member states his or her presence, please also state where you are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. I will call roll. Senator Rosenwald.
Senator Rosenwald from District 13. I'm here in the Senate chamber.
Senator Guida.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Senator Bob Guida, District 2, present in the Senate chamber.
Good afternoon. Senator Reagan. Present. Senator D'Alessandro. Senator Hennessy.
Good afternoon, Aaron Hennessy from Littleton. I am here in the Senate chamber.
Senator Morse.
Senator Chuck Morse, I'm here in the Senate chamber.
And I'm Senator Gary Daniels, and I am in the Senate chamber. I would now invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, Our first presentation this afternoon is with the University System of New Hampshire. And I'll recognize Kathy Preventure. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Catherine Preventure. I serve as the Chief Administrative Officer and Vice Chancellor of Finance for our state's university system. Thank you very much for having me this afternoon. I'm going to move fairly quickly through the material that we provided in advance in hopes of providing sufficient time for the committee to answer any questions. And what I would like to do is share my screen. I believe you may have hard copies as well, but I'd like to start by sharing my screen and again, moving through the material fairly quickly. The university system requested funding in fiscal years 22 and 23 from the state flat at the level that it received in this fiscal year, fiscal 21. And we commit to freeze in-state tuition in fiscal years 22 and 23 at that funding level. We'll maintain the statutory state services and it will support our fiscal roadmap that I'll walk you through in just a minute. The House passed the request as the university system had it flat funding and $88.5 million in each of the 2 fiscal years in the next biennium. And the governor's budget director has recently stated that he is also in support of funding at this level. The primary purpose of the state funding is to support and subsidize New Hampshire resident tuition. You'll see in the table on the left side of this slide that New Hampshire resident tuition and fees are significantly lower than that we charge the out-of-state students. The graph on the right side of your slide shows the net tuition and fees. So this is after we have provided financial aid. And over the past 5 years, that net tuition and fees has stayed very stable and has not increased. This is an announcement our board had approved in January that in-state tuition will be frozen for the upcoming academic year in fiscal 22, and that's the third straight year of an in-state tuition freeze. What I want to talk to you about now is really the trends that we're seeing in higher education, the headwinds that higher education is facing, and what the university system is doing about it. The graphic here shows the decline in high school students in the Northeast in the dark purple line over the next 10 to 15 years. You'll see that it has declined since 2018, but we know in 2025 that decline is going to drop precipitously, both for 4-year and 2-year colleges. So we know that we have to act now in order to take care of these headwinds that are coming for higher education. New Hampshire is projected to be particularly hard hit in the Northeast, with the demographics showing a 26% drop by 2023 in the high school graduates. Coupled with the decline in the number of students who will be coming into the pipeline, the financial need is increasing, and the university system has been providing ever more increasing financial aid, and we project that that will continue, especially post-COVID, as so many families have been hit by the pandemic. So when you couple the declining students with the financial aid, our net tuition and fees is on the decline. And the state support has certainly helped that. We've seen increased state support in fiscal 20 and fiscal 21, but not making up for the decline in the net tuition and fee revenue. So what happens is it directly impacts the bottom line. These gray bars show what we call our operating margin. It's what we have to put in our savings account to continue to invest in our capital plant and one-time strategic investments. And we are projecting a loss for fiscal year 21. And this is exclusive of the one-time COVID-related costs that we've incurred to keep our campuses safe. And the same thing, similarly, in the community college system, net tuition and fees is on the decline. So while we're facing decreased demographics, increased financial aid, then the pandemic hits. And it's had a significant impact. Smaller enrollments this fiscal year, fewer students living on campus, more financial need, and we project about a $25 million unrecovered loss this fiscal year, specifically from the pandemic. That's depleted cash reserves. And this is, again, all before we hit what's coming in fiscal 25. This is a graphic showing where the costs and the recoveries were related to the pandemic. Again, this is one time. Expenses for testing, revenue losses. We provided $42 million in student refunds last spring alone when we had to shut the campuses down. Now with that comes operational savings from not having residence halls and dining halls open. And in addition, we've received significant support from Gopher and from direct federal support from the CARES Act and the second act that was passed in December, and then the third that was just passed in March last month. So what is the university system doing about all this? Last year, about a year ago now, we put together projections for into 21, 22, and 23. What were we going to need to do to make sure we were back at a break even by 2023, exclusive of COVID, if we just take COVID out of the picture? And based on a number of assumptions that we made with increased financial aid, demographic trends, using cash reserves so that would reduce investment income, we've determined that we need to take about 10% or $70 million out of our cost structure by 2023 to break even. And how we're going about that, we've rolled back expenses to fiscal 19 levels. We're restructuring benefits across the board, across the system. We are in the process of restructuring and consolidating back office functions across the entire system. There are a number of campus specific initiatives underway. And the primary tool to do all this was a voluntary retirement program. And we have just under 500 faculty and staff who have taken that program, who have already started leaving the university system. And by the end of this fiscal year, they will have left the university system. It is absolutely unprecedented in the size and scope of the number of people who elected to take this voluntary retirement program, but it was necessary in order to get us to our goal of taking 10% of the costs out by 2023. This just reflects the numbers that, and we have a lot more detail on this, but showing the decline in revenue using the projections that we continue to test to make sure that we're not over or undershooting our target, and then the expenses that need to be taken out. It's important to note this excludes grants because federal grants, it's $1 in, $1 out. So we pulled that out of the model as we were determining the cost that needed to come out of the expenses. The governor, as you're well aware, has proposed a merger between the community college system and the university system. We are in support of the merger proposal. We believe it's another tool in the toolkit to rethink public higher education in the Granite State and address the changes, in not only in the business model, but in delivery of higher education post-pandemic. Certainly the challenges are we need to maintain the missions, the very important missions of both systems. Both systems provide tremendous value to New Hampshire. But again, we believe there's significant benefit for cost reduction and enormous benefit as well to students and employers in the state. I would offer that if the committee would benefit from maybe a separate meeting to drill more into the merger proposal and our thoughts on that, we're happy to do so. But I'm not going to spend, unless there are questions on it, a lot of time on the merger proposal this afternoon. Again, we ask that state funding be maintained at the current level at $88.5 million in each of the 2 years in the next biennium to support our students and public higher education. This is just a graphic that shows the history of state support over the past number of years. This pink part of this graph was a one-time investment made in the last biennium. We're certainly not including that in the requested flat funding. This was one-time investment to support health programs at UNH, primarily the nursing program. I've also provided a number of pieces of information in the appendix, but I know Senator Guider had specific questions relative to debt. And the university system has $382 million in outstanding bonds. About $44 million of that is in taxable bonds for an eco line. It was an energy generation facility at UNH. And we have, that's this top orange amount of the debt service. We have the dollars set aside for that debt service to pay that down as it comes due. The rest of the debt that we have outstanding is for housing. Most of it's for housing. About 63% of it is for housing. Dining, student rec halls, and student centers make up the rest of it. The university system has statutory authority to issue debt only on self-supporting structures, not academic buildings. I am going to stop there to make sure members of the committee have sufficient time to ask questions of me.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Gaida?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kathy, thank you for your presentation. 4 years ago, I had asked a question. I still haven't gotten an answer to it. And the question was, I understand at the UNH campus at the time, I haven't checked as of today, there were 60 plus full-time employees at a fully certificated medical clinic with 3 major hospitals within 10 minutes of the campus. And I questioned James Dean when he arrived, and I never heard anything back on that. I think that that's a potential area that you might want to look at for cutting costs. I could understand an emergency clinic. I can't understand a full medical clinic in full operation.
Senator, I'll be sure to get back to you on that. I don't have readily available the number of employees in the medical facility at UNH, but I'll be sure to get back to you on that very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further questions? Senator D'Alessandro.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for the presentation. Kathy, with regard to the debt, the housing bonds are self-amortizing, right? That's all HEFA stuff, correct?
That is all HEFA, and that is paid back with housing revenue. So room and board revenue, all of our auxiliary revenue, we call it, is pledged to pay down those bonds. That's right.
Okay. And
Follow up?
And the rest of your debt is paid by the state, correctly?
The debt on our academic buildings through the capital budget, yes, is paid by the state. But those bonds are issued by the state through the state's capital budget process.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further questions? I do have one. Your presentation indicated that you were expecting a drop in tuition, enrollment, things like that. So I guess my question is, why are you asking for level funding?
Actually the New Hampshire residents, actually enrollment will drop in all likelihood. We think the enrollment will drop. The level funding is to continue support through our efforts over the next 2 years. I will tell you that right now, our enrollment for the incoming class in the fall across the university system is holding steady. Our deposit deadline is May 1st. So, but level funding is requested to continue to support the tuition freeze, the state services that we support, so that we can provide the educational experience that our New Hampshire residents need.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Have a good afternoon.
You as well.
Okay, our next presentation is with the Community College System of New Hampshire. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator Daniels. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I have with me today Shannon Reed, who heads our legislative affairs and marketing efforts, and Scott Fields, who is the Chief of Operations for the Community College System. And I'm going to take you through a bit of an overview. Scott is going to talk about the budget, and we too will aim to be pithy so that there is time for questions at the end. So beginning, this is the RSA that brought us into being. And we just have begun with this because we want to point out a couple of pieces. We want to express to you about the well-coordinated system that exists within the community college system, and the fact that we continue to serve the mission of technical programs and general professional and transfer programs. What has changed over the last couple of years is that we are offering more certificates and more short-term training programs as a way to serve the workforce needs, but also to give residents of our communities an opportunity to begin a college education while they're working. Next slide, just to remind folks that we have 7 community colleges, but 12 locations. In fact, it's been said that everyone in the state is within a 25-minute commute of a community college, which is exactly what we're looking for. We can do much work online, but all of us want technicians and nurses that have actually had real hands-on experience. And so by having campuses that are within a decent driving distance for our students, we're able to accomplish this. Next slide, please. Even in the pandemic, within 1 year, our graduates are working in New Hampshire. And if we look at the general, 77% are working in New Hampshire. That 22.8% represents people who've either continued with their education and they've gone on for that bachelor's degree, or they are people who are coming to our colleges from the contiguous states of Maine, Vermont, and Massachusetts, or they're self-employed. As you know, 93% of our students are in fact New Hampshire residents. These are the people who work within our communities. One major difference, next slide please, is who comes to community colleges. As the university system is rightfully citing the decline in high school graduates, we too will be affected by that. But we don't expect to be affected by it to the degree that the university is. And you can see from looking at the age range of our students that nearly 80% of our students are 21 or older. And in fact, so many of our students are part-time because they are working. We saw that in a big way during the pandemic. People were expecting nationally that community colleges would benefit and see an increase in enrollment, because historically, when employment goes down, community college enrollment goes up. This, however, was a very different circumstance, and nationally, community colleges were down about 13 or 14%, and some of our colleges did in fact match that decline. However, people are coming back. We are already seeing good numbers for our summer enrollment and for the fall enrollment. And the last panel here, why are they coming? Because our education is local. It's linked to local businesses. It's easy to get to us. There are ways to start with us and then build that credit. For example, if you are a pharmacy technician student, you can fold that into a health science degree and keep going while you're working at one of our neighborhood pharmacies. It's also a great place to rebuild all of that algebra background that you may have forgotten if you've been out of school for a good 10 years. And one of the things that we're proudest of is the economic and social mobility. And in fact, next slide, please. So here we have, thank you. One of the things that we are proudest of is people's movement. As a parent, my dream was that my children would exceed what my husband and I have been able to do in terms of our employment. And it is great news to tell you that that is in fact happening in our community colleges, that by the age of 30, students at the community colleges have moved up at least 2 economic quintiles. And in fact, our rural colleges rank nationally in terms of the mobility, the economic mobility of people with an associate degree. Likewise, the unemployment rate for community college graduates, even during the pandemic, has continue to be the lowest unemployment rate amongst all groups. And we continue to lead the New England region in terms of the number of graduates. And we continue to serve Running Start students and transfer to more than 200 colleges and universities. I'd also point out that 1 in 10 of the USNH graduates began with us. They may not have finished a degree with us, but they came to us to get started and do their general education. And we are in every single county. And you can see here the proportion of enrollment. This doesn't include our high school Running Start enrollment. It is what you would think of as traditional credit students. So what do we base all of this on? It's on the fact that we are a well-coordinated system. We try not to duplicate things. We try to do things at our system office that free the colleges up. So payroll, grants administration, audit, legal, and so on. These things emanate from the system office. It is the system office that worries about our cybersecurity and ensures that our information technology is up to date. We are one entity. We have one federal tax number. We have one collective bargaining agreement for faculty, one for staff. Again, we don't have 7 colleges negotiating their own contracts. It is all contained within our system office. And finally, we really benefit from the current Board of Trustees that we have, because on our Board of Trustees are people who represent every part of the state and also represent the major industry sectors that we continue to serve with their guidance. We are the most affordable option college-wise in the state of New Hampshire. We have managed our expenses, and in fact, this will be year number 11 coming up where we have kept our tuition stable. 2 things that we have done in the pandemic that I would point out to you is that we have considered the entire student. And so every one of our colleges now has a food pantry, helps with transportation assistance. We have interview closets so that people have the appropriate clothing, and we have lent out laptops. We also have embarked on a pretty serious effort to save students the money that textbooks cost. And in the last year, we saved our students $1 million in the expense of their textbooks. Next slide. So here's our budget. We have asked for what essentially the House has approved at the $56 million mark. And it's our goal to continue improving our operational efficiencies by enhancing shared services. I can give you as an example the LPN program, which we restarted. We had closed the LPN program in approximately 2013, and we did that because we respond to workforce needs. And at that point, there wasn't much of a future for LPNs. And so we got out of that business. Well, 2 years ago, there was a cry for LPNs to serve primarily in extended care and health care facilities. So we went back into that business, but we did it in a different way. River Valley is the host of our licensed practical nursing program, and they are sharing that program currently with Lakes Region. Probably next in line will be White Mountains, but this is a very successful pilot for us where one college holds the keys to the curriculum and then shares it with other colleges. They are essentially getting the revenue for the specialty courses, whereas the home college is continuing to receive the general education revenue. And it's working for us, and it's a model that we are going to continue. And in fact, our efforts have been noted nationally, and we're citing a book here by Nathan Graw, who holds up the New Hampshire Community College's work over the last several years as an example of what you can do to build efficiencies and preserve your mission and access, all the while minimizing expenses to the degree that you can. We're very aware of the changing demographics, but community colleges are agile, and we fold up our tent in lean times and we open our tent up as more opportunities become available. We see this next 2 to 3 year period as being an amazing opportunity for us. We're already hearing of several federal grants that will be coming. Our system currently holds 3 apprenticeship grants from the federal government. We were invited this past week to apply to be a technical center and share our knowledge with the other 49 states because of our success. And this particular nonprofit group, I think, highlights beautifully why it is we're optimistic about the future. Next slide, please. So when we look at what's happening in the state of New Hampshire, we agree that there is a diminishment, but when we look at it in terms of the proportion and the ages that we serve, for us, the next 10 years, in order for us to stay up to date and serving our communities, we need to figure out how across the 7 colleges to serve an additional 53 students across 7 colleges. And we are already working on these. We are looking at ways that we can retain students. We are looking at ways that we can serve the or underemployed. And we are confident that going forward, we will be able to meet not only the state's needs, but the anticipated decline in the birth rate and the 15 to 19-year-olds. I would also say that there was a recent publication that came out of the Carsey Institute that talked about the benefits of migration into the state. And I noticed that yesterday on the news, New Hampshire was cited as having grown by 4%. When we look at those people and we think about them as prospective clients or customers that we can serve, and we certainly appreciate our partnership with various state agencies that permit us to be involved with the workforce right up front. So I think you know that we have some concerns about the merger, and some of them, our observations as we've gone through this process are listed here. We are really focused on our mission. And in order to serve our mission, which is to serve the needs of the residents of our state, we've taken many steps. We intend to continue taking steps to address the needs of residents and to preserve our financial stability. Having said that, I will emphasize the last line on the previous slide, which is that we think it's very much in the best interest of the state for the community college system and the university system to work together. We each have distinct missions, but we each need to be partners. And so we look forward to a continued relationship with the university system. So in HB2, our governor proposed a merger, and the university system has come out very much in favor of it. Our position and our board's position is different. We have many questions that we would like to see answered before we progressed down that path. You know, things about accessibility. We've learned, for instance, from looking at the merger that happened in the state of Alaska about the adverse effects that the 2-year and 4-year mergers can have on the community college system. We look at what's happening in Wisconsin. We look at what's happened in Minnesota, where it's taken about 8 years for them to restore that very close industry connection and very close local connection that the community colleges have. And we really urge the state, if this is what you're going to look at, that you take a good look at what has happened in other states. We also, and in talking to folks, were asked whether we would have a different proposal. So we offer a different model as you're having your deliberations, and that would be something based upon what is happening in Maine, which is the Higher Education Coordinating Council. And we we leave that up here as an idea as the state is looking at different possibilities. Given the similar demographic trends, we think that this approach honors the system's differing missions, student needs, the local impacts, and the operating structures while creating a formal vehicle for accountability. And I'll ask Shannon to speak about these other provisions, please.
Briefly, another section of House Bill 2, as passed by the House, related to the dual and concurrent STEM scholarship program. This is the program that funds high school students to take up to 2 STEM or STEM-related courses for dual high school and college credit. That program had essentially lived within the Department of Education the last couple of years, but DOE requested that it be shifted to the community college system, and we agreed with doing that. And so in House Bill 2, that shift is made. That's on page 163 to 165 of House Bill 2 as passed by the House. And that program is funded at $1.5 million per year, which we have projected would be the cost to meet the demand for that program. We do have 2 requests that are outlined in the subsequent bullets, which are to add language that just allows us to meet any fluidity of demand and registration. We can project what the need will be, but we can't be precise about what it will be. So putting language in that makes those funds non-lapsing means that we can use one year's funding if we need to in the next year. And then if demand exceeds that appropriated amount, to give us the ability to come back to the fiscal committee and kind of explain where we are and to see whether that additional demand can be met.
And to close, I'm going to ask Scott Fields to take us through a few slides that give you a sense of how we've put our budget together, how we've reduced expenses and such. So Scott, if you would please comment on our operating budget.
Absolutely, thank you. Good afternoon. This slide shows 2 charts outlining CCS&H's FY20 actual revenue expenses broken out by major category. One thing that I'd like to point out is, like many organizations, our largest expense category is related to personnel costs, which accounts for approximately 72% of our total expenditures. Moving on to slide 19. The graphs here depict the trends associated with our major revenue expense categories from the prior slide, but over a 3-year period. As you can see from the graphs, we adjust our expenditures to meet the changes within our revenue streams. The next few slides will highlight this point even further. This slide highlights our ability to flex our operations to meet the demands of the broader marketplace. The charts on the right-hand side show the correlation between our total expenditures and system-wide student headcount trends over the last 4 years. A key takeaway here is that we actively manage our personnel costs in the same manner that we do our operational expenditures, which is to meet the changing demands that are put forth on our system. Slide 21. The chart on the left shows a breakdown of our personnel expense categories by employment type over a 5-year period. As you can see, in the 5th year, we've included the overall percentage decrease from year 1 through year 5, again, showing our proactive approach to flexing our operations to meet our demands. I would also like to call out that, if we can go back to that slide there, call out our adjunct expense chart on the right-hand side of the slide. This graphic shows the results of CCS&H's continued focus on continual improvement. Our success here is like a stool with 3 legs because of the proactive approach that we take in improving our course scheduling processes, increasing section sizes, and our shift to more online classes over the last few years. Essentially, what this shows is the results of us getting better at what we do to manage our costs on a year-to-year basis. Slide 22, please. This data delves specifically into our employee benefit expenses. As you can see, we've been able to achieve significant cost savings in all categories over the last 4 years, except for those associated with New Hampshire retirement system, which are beyond our ability to control or negotiate. We have managed these benefits through strong negotiations and defraying costs by shifting towards more employee wellness-based programming. And the final slide. This highlights the state's growing support of CCS&H over the last 2 biennium. The increase in state funding has allowed CCS&H to move a little bit closer to the national average for community colleges in terms of the proportion of public support. Nationally, that is about 2/3 of funds come from public support, and here in New Hampshire, approximately 50-50. Your continued support has allowed CCS&H to maintain its affordability, its access, and our ability to deliver quality education, impacting the lives of our students and improving the economy in every county of the state. I will stop there in case there are any questions.
All right. So, Mr. Chair, we thank you for the support that we have enjoyed over the last few years. We hope that we've demonstrated to you that we are wise stewards and very conservative with the money that comes our way from the state, and frankly also with our student funds. We understand very clearly that our students and their families are very hardworking, and we want to give them a top benefit on every dollar they invest in us. So thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Senator Rosenwald has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask if the appropriation that's in the budget, what is the effect of that on tuition for the next 2 years?
Senator Rosenwald, we intend to continue with flat tuition. We see that as a critical commitment to our students and their families.
For both years?
For both years, yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chancellor Heward, thank you for your presentation and your team. Can you speak to the financial status of the students, both coming, say, out of high school and also the I would call the more adult students that are transitioning through job changes and so forth? What I'm looking for is if the college represents climbing the economic ladder and taking people in a very depressed state, part of our state, and enabling them to progress into a better financial position.
Okay, thank you, Senator Gaida, for the question. I'm going to start and ask my team to jump in. In general, about 1/3 of our students, full or part-time, are fully Pell eligible. And then another third, so bringing us to about 67% of our students all have some form of federal financial aid. We also have increased the work with our foundation and with various companies to support students. And so our financial condition of our students is modest, I guess I would say. When you think about for someone who's 18 or older to be fully Pell eligible, that means that they're not making more than, in general, about someplace between 16 to 18,000. So I would characterize our folks as being in a very modest position. We rely on help from the federal sources, but also from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, the Medallion Fund in particular, that is helpful. But it would not be an exaggeration for me to say every single one of our students receives some level of financial support, whether it's through private sources of scholarships or federal sources.
Follow up?
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you, I think you mentioned it, but can you iterate or reiterate what percentage of your students work and remain in New Hampshire?
On the slide, we had approximately 78%, 77% remain in New Hampshire to work. But that number is artificially low because that 22 or 23%, some of those folks are going into and starting their own businesses, and some of them are going on. We start from the place that 93% of our student body is from the state of New Hampshire. And at the very least, approximately 80% of them are staying here. They are the Little League coaches and the scout leaders, and those are the folks that are serving on the boards. We're serving residents in our state.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? I just have one. How involved are the trustees in the discussions and the major decision-making in the direction of the community colleges?
They play a significant role, Senator Daniels. They are responsible for reviewing the strategic plan. In fact, we just at our last board meeting established what the strategic pillars will be going forward. Because so many of them are in regional, they're serving as a regional representative or they're serving as an industry sector representative. They play critical roles in introducing us to people that we may not yet be serving, or companies that don't fully know what it is we do. I would describe them as appropriately active. They are not into the operational details, but they certainly are into helping our colleges and our students be successful. They, each one of them not only serves on the full body, but they serve on subcommittees, which meet every other month and help to direct and modify what the efforts are that the community college system is making. We see their connections as absolutely critical to our success and our ability to be agile. They are in the labor markets of the state, and it's not unusual for one of the trustees to say, you know, Susan, you need to go talk to so-and-so, or did you hear about this new project that's getting underway? So we consider our board of trustees a critical piece. They are our lifeblood. They keep us connected, along with the technical advisory committees that serve every one of our degree programs.
Great, thank you.
Sir.
Seeing no more questions, thank you for your presentation this afternoon.
Thank you for your time and your efforts. We appreciate them enormously.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Next, we have the Department of Corrections.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair Senator Daniels and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Helen Hanks. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Corrections, and I can also share my slide. So I thank you for joining this afternoon. I think what you will find as we go through these slides is our proposed budget does what our mission asks us to accomplish, which is to create a safe and humane correctional environment that provides for rehabilitative activities for those incarcerated in the state of New Hampshire, all balanced by ensuring justice to the victims and survivors of crime, with a focus on public safety upon people's return to New Hampshire communities. So on page 2, it's actually technically page 1, not including the cover sheet. You'll see a high-level overview that continues to demonstrate that the department requires a significant number of staffing in order to fulfill its mission. Show you our actuals of 2020, those of FY 2021 adjusted. Those were adjusted twofold as a result of the Teamsters contract. There was a 4% pay increase for corrections officers and corporals, as well as an adjustment to double time after their first 16 hours overtime. That would be the difference you're seeing in those 2 years expenditures. After working with the House, we provided you the figures from the House approved budget for 2021, which restored funding to most of our educational services, the funding that we needed to continue to run our Shea Farm Transitional Housing Unit for women and our Calumet Transitional Housing Unit for men.
Commissioner, were you intending to share your slides?
Yes, it didn't work.
It's not working.
Oh, Sarah, I am going right along. Let me try that again. That's strange. Let's see. Huh. All right, let me get X out of there and try this over. Huh. Pardon me. That's very, you know, I'm slightly entertained with the number of digital platforms I've been using that this is happening to me today, of course. All right, let me stop and start again. And let's see if we can do this successfully. Round 2. How about that?
That looks better.
Let's shrink it down. There's that cover sheet I mentioned. All right. On page 1, as I was discussing, I just wanted to point out the differences between the 2020 actual and the 2021. We were affected through the Teamsters' ability to have a collectively bargained agreement. And that was what I referenced earlier, that 4% increase for corrections officers and corporals. It did adjust our authorized for 2021 and their double overtime. So you'll see the significant difference in the personnel services for those 2 years. Continue to reemphasize that we are a staffing resource organization in order to fulfill our mission. And in the work done through the House Finance, we were able to advocate for and have funding returned to our Career Technical Education Center, our Granite State High School, and other resources that we deliver to help build vocational and educational opportunities to those incarcerated in New Hampshire, because we know that focus reduces recidivism, both in our state and in national research. In addition to, the House saw fit to restore funding to our Shea Farm Transitional Housing Unit, as well as our Calumet Housing Unit. And that is the primary difference between the 2021 House approved budget and the 2023 House approved budget on slide 1. I do have a very high detail page on page 8, but I will move on to page 2. Representing the dollars of personnel services, we have 965 of our 971 authorized full-time positions funded at this time. As I proceed through the presentation, I will be asking for the additional funding for the 6 vacant authorized positions that are currently not funded as we traveled out of the House phase of the budget process. Our ask is also to continue the support through the footnote documented on page 3 that allows us to move through personnel lines funding associated with vacant positions that result in overtime costs to the department to fulfill our obligation and posts across our facilities. That has been a successful tool as we've navigated the budget, and we do go before fiscal and governor and council when those instances occur. I'm going to move to page 4. An area of discussion continues to be medical and pharmacy. That is another area of cost to the state and the agency. I would like to share that is articulated on this page. We were successful in attaining 340B drug pricing, a federal drug pricing model, and we are hopeful that will help assist in reducing the financial burden of pharmaceuticals through the Department of Corrections through this purchasing program. And we have 2 of our staff going through the process. This became effective in October of 2020. So we do have to move through some administrative processes first, but are hopeful that that will continue to assist again as we move into 2022 and 2023. But with that, we are continuing to ask for a footnote that allows us to go before fiscal for unseen medical or pharmaceutical costs that may occur. We have from time to time needed that opportunity when we weren't able to forecast for unseen medical events and pharmaceutical costs in the department. We have not had to engage in that over the last biennium, but we certainly have through the history of the agency needed this type of footnote. Would ask the Senate Finance to continue to consider the approval of that as we move forward in the budget processes. On page 5, we focus on what was approved in the House and what we would like the Senate to consider for funding. We would like the continued funding for our authorized 6 positions associated with education, and that table shows the costs for each fiscal year. We did provide an attachment that goes through the detail of what those positions provide for this agency. In the absence of those positions, we would not be able to fill the areas listed in the attachment. Of the 6 education positions, 2 are currently filled by full-time state employees. In addition to what we're asking for to keep us static. We are asking for appropriations for additional prioritized requests that are not currently funded. We continue to need additional probation and parole officer positions. We do have a full slide on that. We will continue to make the request to fund our marketing program. It has been no surprise that this agency, both in the state of New Hampshire, struggles to recruit and retain certified corrections officer. That is a national issue among corrections organizations, but we have found that the recruiting firm through M5 as our current contractor has been successful in drawing in enough numbers to fill our academies through the year and continue to move us in the right direction as an agency. And it has been a discussion both in legislation and national dialogue. We, the Department of Corrections, have a funding mechanism to pilot body-worn cameras in 3 specific housing units at the New Hampshire State Prison for Men, but would ask the Senate to consider providing a funding allocation that would allow us to deploy body-worn cameras across the organization. And the first year's funding has the hardware outlay, and the second year funding is the continuing costs for that IT software infrastructure. I outlined specifically on page 5 at the bottom, the cost of the positions for education. And as I move on to page 6, I go into the details to show the caseload distribution across our district offices in the state. The nationally recognized ratio is 1 to 79 on an average caseload, if you will. And in the state of New Hampshire, we have statewide drug courts. The statewide drug court ratio is 1 to 30 with a high recommendation of 1 to 50. And each of these caseload ratios are variable depending on the high risk, medium to low risk nature of those individuals on the caseloads. We've made strides to reduce those caseload ratios twofold in the work done through diversion in the drug court, but also in looking at opportunities, but continue to see that our probation and parole officers carry high caseloads. These 6 new proposed positions would help equalize those caseloads as well as ensure best practices in our participation with the drug court. I do offer the drug court being a significant resource that the #1 driver with regard to incarceration in the state of New Hampshire continues to be around substance use disorder and illicit abuse of drugs. This will help us be a good partner in trying to help redirect people to those services and pay attention to public safety and direction to treatment when appropriate. And moving on to page 7, provide the detail associated with the recruitment and marketing firm and some history on our new hires since we've been with this firm. Year to date, I even have updated numbers for our year to date, which include hiring 47 corrections officers and 36 civilian employees. So we continue to move in the right direction with regard to recruitment. And we do use the recruitment and marketing firm because the issues in the community with regard to hiring licensed alcohol drug counselors and licensed social workers is no different in corrections. We're all drawing from the candidates graduating from the community college, if you will, to work in our environments to support the citizens in New Hampshire, including those incarcerated in our prison facilities. I provide further at the bottom of page 7 the detail with regard to our body-worn camera and the pilot we referenced. We are in the bid phase to procure 50 body-worn cameras, but with the number of officers upwards of 337 and then 76 probation parole officers, you'll see that's really it truly is a pilot, and we do see the value in reducing both litigation that we experience in the correctional realm and reduction of false allegations, as well as clarity in situations in question, and have been working with technical assistance advisors and talking with other correctional organizations across the country who have deployed this technology and found it to be very valuable and helpful in a corrections environment. Moving on to page 8, I want to talk specifically.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Just to keep us on the same page, you seem to be one page off from us.
Oh. Senator Daniels, I wish I was in the room so badly today. All right. So I am ahead of you or behind you?
As you can see at the bottom of the page that you're
there I
reflecting
am.
is page 7, not 8.
Thank you, sir. On page 7, our House approved HB2 items include 2 requests that we would continue to seek Senate Finance support on, which is to help rectify what I have seen as a glass ceiling here in corrections. And that glass ceiling is that the knowledge transfer and opportunity for promotion within this agency is impeded by individuals who have been duly vested in their Group 2 status. I had proposed originally that individuals who were 10 years vested in their Group 2 status would retain that status in the both administrative classified management positions as well as the other unclassified currently not Group 2 positions if they were promoted into them. The House saw fit to split that, and I understand why, because the retirement law did shift where some people are 10-year vested and 15-year vested, and recognizing that there is a lot of individual knowledge and opportunity, and people who have, in many instances, 20 years of Group 2 vested interest in the state do not look to these promotional opportunities because it is a financial deficit as well as a benefit deficit if they transfer to Group 1 retirement services. And I would ask in the state's interest to consider these opportunities. They are vetted and certainly viable promotional opportunities, but not to close the network and create a promotion ceiling within corrections, and seeking your support to continue what came out of the House. On the bottom of page 7 is also a request that came through in really working on old language in the law and creating our correctional industries limits to align to the current standard that all others seek. We had traditionally seen, you'll see a strike through of the amount 5,000. We're just looking to align it to the manual of procedures for our correctional industries program, and would hope to see the Senate support that continued HB2 item. So as I properly move to page 8, that is the detail that I discussed at the very beginning to show you a very high level overview of the class lines affecting this agency in the House side, as well as across areas, both in the original adjusted authorized of 2021, the difference between what came out of the House and what's before you today. And I would just footnote that the Parole Board's budget is not included in these pages. And on page 9, we do provide the full comparative of what came out of the governor's recommended and the House approved, which would then bring us to the attachment I referenced that goes into the details of the positions. So with that, after my technical difficulty, I am certainly available to answer any questions on behalf of the fine committee.
Thank you. Question, Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony. I'm looking on the House approved last page, page 8.
Yes, sir.
On line 62, I see workers' comp in 2020 was $1.1 million, and it's half of that roughly going forward. Is that attributable to COVID, or what's the the dramatic change in the workman's comp?
Senator Gaida, thank you for that question. We actually are provided that forecasted number from the Department of Administrative Services. I could certainly follow up and ask them why the adjustment in our budget line, but I don't have a clear answer for you today.
Follow up. Did you have an abnormal, claims during the pandemic as opposed to years prior?
I actually did not, sir. I was mindful that might be the case. That was not the driving factor, so I do need to get you a clearer answer.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Further questions? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions, if I could. I noticed that the medical payments to providers is down about $3 million outside the pharmacy line. I'm wondering if you can explain that.
Senator Rosenwald, thank you for that question. We have been working aggressively both on our formulary and monitoring the way in which we engage in contracting. We have seen a decline over the last 2 years So the forecast within this budget is a hopeful forecast of what we've been experiencing the last 2 years. I can get you some very detailed specifics associated with the areas we're seeing that in, but it really boils down to a change in state law, an alignment to a Medicaid payment methodology within the state law provision for correctional facilities, as well as a reduction in our overall population within the facilities. And we think it's a conservative forecast balanced with the 340B pricing we're hoping to see a full benefit from and soon over the preceding biennium coming forward.
Follow up?
Did I understand you to say that we would pay a hospital basically the Medicaid rate if one of your inmates needs hospital care, not Medicare?
No. In some instances, we've been able to negotiate a % of the Medicare rate for outpatient services based on the statute governing correctional payments. But we have been and continue to utilize the inpatient Medicaid reimbursement methodology for inpatient hospitalizations. And that has helped reduce the general fund burden of medical services delivered within correctional facilities. So I didn't mean to confuse you with the reference, but separating out the two claims events, Medicaid deferred for inpatient stay and using the statutory Medicare plus 10% rates for services that are outpatient based for corrections facilities.
Thank you. I don't know if you have, if I could follow up, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if you have inmates who go to a methadone clinic every day, but no, one of our county jails has recently become licensed itself as a methadone clinic, and that saves the difference between the county cost and what they had to pay a private provider. Is that something you've looked at?
Senator Rosenwald, thank you for pointing out medication-assisted treatment and its value within correctional settings. We are using Vivitrol and Suboxone, buprenorphine as our primary pharmaceuticals. We're not licensed for methadone at this time. We have been working with our chief pharmacist and taking the necessary next steps. But at this time, we're using those primary and nationally recognized MAT medications within our facilities and benefiting from a receipt of state opioid response dollars through our partner agency, Health and Human Services, and the federal allocation to fund those pharmaceuticals at this time.
Thank you. And just two quick other questions. The 6 teacher positions, are they currently filled? And is your transitional housing fully funded at this point?
Thank you, Senator Rosenwald. The transitional housing units are all fully funded as they came out of the House. Of the 6 positions I'm asking Senate Finance to fund, 2 of them are filled. And I would add that we still, as an agency, are working with New Hampshire Legal Assistance to create equity/parity of services for women. And of those that are vacant, they are part of our plan moving forward to create that equity.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Senator D'Alessandro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner, the House made significant changes having to do with the transitional housing, Shea Farm and Calumet. What was the rationale that the governor brought forward in eliminating the financing of the financing for these housing units?
Senator D'Alessandro, I certainly wouldn't speak for the governor's office, but I would discuss that at the time in which we proposed the effect of many reductions that many state agencies had to consider those cause and effects. If the state needed this agency to reduce its budget, we would have consolidated the transitional housing services and used existing buildings on the campus. But as a cause of doing that, we would have created some overcrowding within the prison facility because we would have lost those opportunities for beds.
Further question?
So the restoration was really, you support the restoration, and we should support the restoration.
sir, I'm asking for your support for the restoration as I asked the House to support the restoration, which they did. And in doing so, also recognize that both the opportunity for transitional housing also serves to reduce recidivism in a correctional population by providing a path and avenue to employment and slow transition, especially those individuals whose minimum sentence structure result in a lengthy incarceration and need that transition time to reacclimate to society as it is during their time of transition.
And further question, Mr. Chairman?
Further question?
And the improvements at the Shea Farm that are being financed by the overage in the payment, are they taking place? I'm talking about the women's shower facilities, the bathroom facilities, and the living area.
Senator D'Alessandro, I'd take this opportunity to thank you and other members of the Senate that allowed us to create that non-lapsing fund. And yes, we are taking advantage of those funding opportunities to improve the infrastructure, including the windows, for example, at Calumet, as well as the bathroom and shower space at Shea Farm. And we'll continue to make infrastructure advancements so that the living environment is as positive as the transition that we hope individuals will engage in during that time.
Thank you. One further question. And transportation for the inmates in terms of their work, their opportunities to get work. What has been done in that area?
Senator D'Alessandro, I believe you're speaking specifically about Shea Farm because it's on the outskirts of the city of Concord. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Thank you for that question. We had worked for some time with members of the Concord community with the hope that we might be able to extend the bus line or things of that nature. What we found in examining the women's work schedules is there was no ideal timing for transportation. So we continue to work both with partner agencies and within our own agency to look for solutions on transportation. In the interim, they are using rideshare. They are permissible to call a taxi of service. And we do also help and assist in picking them up. We want to make sure that the women who reside at Shea Farm are safe. We have not to date had any adverse events with regard to transportation, but we're mindful that we need to continue to work for and ensure an equitable and safe solution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir.
Further questions, Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Just one last question. How many inmates today do you have who would be eligible for a new forensic hospital?
Right now, today, Senator Rosenwald, I don't have that number right in front of me. I know that we worked for a significant period of time with Health and Human Services and came to a bed census of 25. I would affirm for you that the majority of people in the secure psychiatric unit today are adjudicated. That is upwards of 20 people. I am speculating right now based on the last review, not today, that there were about 12 people we would have transferred, but I will get you today's numbers.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Any further questions? I do have one. Is recidivism up, down, or staying the same?
Senator Daniels, thank you for that question. It is slightly up with the caveat that our recidivism is a 3-year review post-release. So it would be for people who left in 2017. And again, their returns to incarceration continue to be around substance use disorder. So as we, the state, tackle opportunities to engage people in the community around their substance use disorder, we're going to help target interventions to reduce reincarceration.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Seeing no more questions, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for your patience. Have a great day.
And you as well.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is with the New Hampshire Adult Parole Board.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair Senator Daniels.
Good afternoon.
And good afternoon, Senators of the Senate Finance Committee. My name is Jennifer Sargent. I'm the chairman of the New Hampshire Adult Parole Board, and it's a pleasure to appear in front of you today. I would like to begin also by sharing my screen so that you have the opportunity to see the materials that I have prepared and provided to you and for you, and also so we can get through this presentation as speedily as possible so that I have time to answer any and all questions that you may have. I'd like to begin by showing you what I have prepared for you, which is the result of the New Hampshire Adult Parole Board Performance Summary Audit. This happened it was published by the Legislative Office of the Budget in 2019 April. The performance audit summary came up with a series of observations, and I have prepared for you a 20-page document which has the summary of all 26 observations and has what the auditors noted in their observation, as well as the yes or no concurrences of the board and the Department of Corrections. We, as the New Hampshire Adult Parole Board, work very closely with the Department of Corrections. We are administratively connected to the Department of Corrections for primarily financial purposes of making sure things get paid, leases are managed, et cetera. But we are not one and the same. The New Hampshire Adult Parole Board is a separate state agency that is responsible, is a quasi-judicial agency that is responsible for holding evidentiary hearings, adversarial evidentiary hearings like a court, only agency hearings, in order to decide whether, one, residents who are inside the facility are ready for parole on or slightly before their minimum parole dates, or whether they are, if they violate their parole, eligible or I should say suitable for a setback, which is a return to the prison and a reevaluation of their parole plan so that they can have a better rehabilitative opportunity once back in the community. So you will see in this performance audit summary my comments that I have done in bold. And this document I originally presented to the House for its consideration, the House Division I House Finance Committee. So what is in bold will tell you where I am in the process of the audit and what my intentions and the board's intentions are in order to implement the audit. I want to tell you that everything in this budget, everything that is proposed, everything that is statutorily proposed in HB2, as well as monetarily imposed by the governor and myself, monetarily suggested by the governor and myself, that these things are not at all pork or extra asks. They are money that is necessary, monies that are necessary to implement the audit. It is the reason I was brought in. I have been chairman since January of 2020, brought in as a member of the parole board in November of 2019, but chair as of January 2020 in order to take hold of the parole office, the parole process, and the parole board, and make sure that we not only modernize it, not only in accordance with the audit recommendations, but also in accordance with modern technology and the opportunities that other parole boards around the country have and engage in, and also that we correct for what has been an inconsistent, unwritten, and I would say fly by the seat of its pants in some ways process that the Adult Parole Board has operated within for the last 2 decades. So with that in mind, I will shift away from the performance audit summary observations allow you to take a look at them and go to the next handout that I have prepared for you, which is the New Hampshire Adult Parole Board explanation of the differing class line funding. I found it easiest, and I hope you agree with me, to go ahead and go through the class lines individually. Mark out the governor's recommendations for funding for 22 and 23, put in what the HB1 numbers are currently for 22 and 23, and then explain to you what the Adult Parole Board recommendations are for 22 and 23. Where there exists a difference, I have written out that difference and then explained what is the money that is the difference and why are there different numbers suggested here. And to go along with this document, I have also created a document called the New Hampshire Adult Parole Board Supplemental Material Packet. And within that, you have all of the supplemental materials needed to refer to when reading this explanation of the differing class lines. So knowing that we are all, the governor's office, the Adult Parole Board, and the House, we are in agreement on many of the lines. However, several of the lines, and I would argue several of the most important lines, we are not necessarily in agreement with. And that is why I want to bring to your attention step by step the lines that we are not in agreement with. First of all, for line 010, which is the class line for full-time classified positions, the HB1 fiscal year numbers are 177,253 and 188,750. Now, what you can see from these numbers is that they are the same as the governor's recommendation, but the Adult Parole Board's is higher. And this is why. Currently, 4 classified positions exist. Those are the positions of the executive assistant, who is basically the director of operations in the office, the supervisor 4 position, a secretary 2, and an executive secretary position. However, what happened, and this is just a mistake, we know mistakes happen, we are requesting another classified position of a full-time case counselor, case manager. Unfortunately, even though the governor's office has supported that position since day one, when I was in discussions with the governor's office about it, when the governor's office did its numbers, it erroneously left out that new position. So I direct your attention to page 5 of the supplemental material pack. You can see what the governor's numbers were initially, and I've marked this first class line as the CCCM position being left out. And I also, on page 6, do have proof of that. Here is an email from Matthew Mayo, who is the budget director for the governor's office, to Representative Ober, explaining that that was in fact inadvertently excluded from the budget and that the governor's office did support it and continues to support this new position. It is extremely important that we have in our classified positions all 4 that currently exist and the CCCM case counselor, case manager position to bring us up to 5 classified positions. The workload in the office is extreme. The audit did recognize that we are woefully understaffed, that our work is increasing while our productivity is either staying the same or being reduced because of a lot of different things, personnel, some turnover, COVID, and the lack of technology in the office. So I would ask, here is the difference. It is just that right here, that missing salary. So I would ask that the Senate fund the class line at what the adult parole board is asking for, 222.70 and 237.808. Once we get into the class line 11, we are talking about unclassified positions. Currently, the executive assistant position that does exist but is currently vacant because we lost our executive assistant at the beginning of COVID and we've lost her permanently. That is unfilled, but we do have the money to hire someone else. However, there needs to also be a full-time parole board chairman position as the director of this state agency. I have taken over that position. I currently have a full-time temporary position that will expire on June 30th, end of day, 2021. And the state needs, the parole board needs to have this chairman's position created as a full-time position. I have taken over many of the operations of the parole board in terms of everything from policy, legislation, administrative rules, all of the legal work. This is an incredibly legal position. My former experience as both a judge, a district court judge, and a public defender have come in extremely handy because we do, as I say, run hearings, and the hearings are, at least on Tuesdays, adversarial evidentiary hearings. So I sit almost as a chief judge in that position every Tuesday. And so what happens here is the numbers due for the governor's recommendation and for the adult parole board recommendation figure in a unclassified salary at the level GG based on a comparison of, and I'll refer you back to the supplemental materials, the last 3 pages, pages 7, 8, and 9, salary of GG, showing you why the governor's office and I believe that it is an appropriate level in comparison to other state agency directors and the like who receive it, and also explaining what this position does. If we go back then to our class 11 line, what you see is here is a number by HB 21 in 22 that is different by $41,350. Bringing you again to the supplemental packets and bringing you to page 2. Surprisingly, the Finance Committee, the Division I Finance Committee, wrote in that it was beginning on January 1st that the salary of the chairman would be established not to be higher than grade GG until the appropriate grade was determined. That did not appear, as you can see in page 1 of the legislative amendment in paragraph 3 to, this is now 651A3, the makeup of the parole board. The governor and I both put forward that the salary of the chairman should be that as grade GG, with the appropriate step to be determined. The governor and I and his staff have determined that step 2 would be appropriate. That is in that supplemental piece of information about step GG that I told you about. And then it does not say that the salary is to be delayed. If the salary were to be delayed, I would not be working as a full-time chair for a salary for 6 months. I don't know whether the finance committee wasn't clear on the fact that my job is only temporary, and frankly, the full-time expires, and it expires on June 30th with the intention of it starting as this full-time chairman on July 1st, but I cannot work for free for 6 months. So I would ask that the Senate appropriately fund our class line 11 at this number right here for a full year of salary for full-time chairman and a full year of salary for the executive assistant, and then the same with a step up for 2023. Line 20, current expenses. These are just additional expenses that would need $200. That's it, because we decided with the Department of IT, DOIT, to add in a copy machine into the hearings room, which will allow the hearings to be modernized and allow the work to be more efficient. In class line 2022 with leases, we have a difference of 1,006, which is the lease for that additional copier in the hearings room. The copier itself, the lease is 1,428, but we have some offset there because with this digitization project, and I'll talk to you about that in a second when I get to line 27, with the parole board digitization project, we can actually get a better copier for a lower lease for the main parole office. So we can offset some of that. So I would ask that the class line, it's erroneous here that says 011, it should be 022 at 3506 and 3506 for both. Here is line 27. Here's the big part of the digitization project. When I first went to Division I Finance, Division I Finance said to me, where is your line 27? Parole has never had its own line 27. I didn't even know what a line 27 was, I'm embarrassed to admit, because I didn't realize, because we've been administratively connected to the Department of Corrections, that the line 27 has always been in the Department of Corrections to manage the IT costs and all of the breakdown and such. So with the commissioner available for discussion, and also with the encouragement of Representative Ober, I went back several times to the Department of to DOC IT, and also to Commissioner Goulet of the DAS IT, and worked up an entire line 27 breakdown of everything that the department would need, that the parole office would need. And here is that entire class 27 breakdown. Now, the unfortunate thing is that the numbers were not finalized, believe it or not, until this past Friday. That meant that none of these actual numbers got into what the governor asked for and what I originally asked for in front of the House. But we have them now, and this is what I'm asking for. Where you see 6 instead of 5, that also includes the equipment for the new CCCM case manager position, because that position will require technology as well. So this is all of the technology for all of the Digitization Project. Now, what is the Digitization Project? Well, here on the prior page, under Priority 2, you will see that I say, the audit and the media observed that the boards and the offices, meaning parole offices, operations were costly and inefficient and based heavily on non-technology-based operations. That's an understatement. Everything in the parole office was being done on paper, which is a nightmare, both administratively and for cost. So this detailed new class line 27, which is asked for in the budget, modernizes the board's operations to allow each board member to have a laptop and a docking station and working internet inside of the hearings room. That is actually not a security threat because it only reads to the members' computers. So it creates this opportunity for all of the members to be digitized for their parole preparation. And that's going to mean something in just a second when I show you this photograph and tell you how many hours of preparation it goes into. It's also going to allow me to design centralized IT files. It's going to allow us to redesign our parole certificate, which right now is antiquated and doesn't do the job. It doesn't allow us enough choices and allow us the correct checkboxes. It will allow us to devise a plan by which we can do parole revocation and parole minutes, which in real time can spill into the computer and be put into that parole certificate. So it expedites the entire parole release process in a way. We have other things we have to worry about releases as well, but we really need to be expediting all of our processes, both in our office and for the board members. And the reason I say this to you is I'm going to go to the last page now of the supplemental materials. This is a bit jarring. This is a typical parole packet set for one day of Thursday parole hearings, which are the release hearings. This is a typical preparation for a day of hearings for the parole members. This is a ream of paper. There are usually 750 to 1,000 pages that the members have to dig through, and they're not written like a book. They are records. Some of them are in 9-point font. Some of them are in columns that don't match up. It takes, and this is for 25 to 28 hearings every Thursday, and usually somewhere in the lines of about 20, 21, 22 for Tuesdays. The board members are putting in between 25 and 30 hours now of work per week. That is a part-time job for individuals who are currently paid $100 a day for hearing days only. Can you imagine prepping 30 hours or more if you're on twice a week, 60 hours or 45 hours for $100 for the 2 days of hearing? It is preventing me from recommending to the governor new recruits for the board. It has stopped my ability to recruit. And that's very dangerous for the parole board and for the citizens of New Hampshire, because if no one wants to sit on the parole board, then we are not going to be able to offer parole. We also must maintain a consistent number of parole board members on the board. It can't go from 9 to 4 to 3 to 6. Everybody needs to be trained. Everybody must have institutional memory. So it's very important. It's also important to know that the hearings go straight from 9 a.m. to 4:30. If you've ever watched the hearings, and I invite you to do so because they are public, and right now we are doing them on Zoom. We make jokes on the parole board about having to wear astronaut diapers because we can't even get up. We have to go through them so fast. And by the way, we are backed up for 2 to 3 months sometimes with people who need to have their parole hearing. We have to schedule them in accordance with the right to know law. So we must schedule them a month before they are to be heard with the new earned time credit, and also with the opportunity for judges to be suspending minimum sentences, which they are doing like wildfire these days. Perhaps it has something to do with the petitions coming out of the prison from the inmates from the residents who feel that they are being held up, even though we are not missing. We are hitting everybody's parole hearing when we need to do that. We have this onslaught, this tidal wave of residents who are getting ready for parole, and we have to be able to keep up. That's why we need this new CCCM, this person who helps put these packets together. It's why we need to automate the packet process. It's why we need to automate the office. It's why we need to come to full staff. We're in a pretty desperate situation in terms of personnel and in terms of technology. That's why this is such a major ask, because we need to infuse the audit with everything it needs for me to implement it and for our parole board to succeed. I've spent the last year doing a national investigation of all of the different states and of the ones who give parole, which is the majority, whether they've had full parole boards, part-time parole boards, how their parole boards are structured, what they do, how they're paid, et cetera. We are really behind the times. We've got to come up to national standards, and my proposals bring us to national standards. And you'll read a lot about that if you take the opportunity to read the audit materials that I've given you. So what we have here is that entire class 27 line, which will bring us completely into line with the audit. Going to, and I just have to move this on my screen. Going back to this class line 27, the transfers to OIT, they only appear in HB1 because this was where we brainstormed this idea of making the transfer of line 27, that's for the holding for the Department of Corrections for the parole board, to making the parole board its own line 27. So again, we need this money to make our own line 27, and then we need the money that I've broken down in the actual line 27, which are the following lines. Line 37, which is hardware, that appears in the breakdown. This is all the hardware that's required up front. The reason that it says 750 and 750, 7550 is because these were the preliminary numbers. This is the final number as of last Friday. You can see it's 0 in 23. That's because these are all upfront payments. And I'd like to bring to your attention the fact that mailing the huge paper packets that you saw twice a week to the board members, Xeroxing, mailing, postage, etc., that cost over $10,000 a year. We will be saving over $10,000 a year in copying and postage alone. So we're going to recoup this number very, very quickly by going to digitization and getting away from paper.
Jennifer, if you could suspend. I have a question from Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Hennessy, yes, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. When you have these numbers on what you're going to be saving, could you also provide us with the savings, the figures, so we can adjust those budget lines appropriately as well?
Sure. I have actually adjusted those budget lines in my, what you will see right here in the supplemental packet on page 5, right? I'm sorry, on page 3. This is my parole board entire worksheet. So you will see certain things, but what you won't see, because some of it is in the Department of Corrections pages, is the Department of Corrections has has the paper numbers, has the postage numbers, and has the mailroom numbers. So because they've been what's administratively connected to us, so they've been in control of doling out the paper and the postage. But general fund will save, should I say, general fund will save $10,000 right off the top for getting rid of the postage and the paper. But to the extent that I can provide those numbers, I will work with Commissioner Hanks and get those for you.
Okay.
All right, going back to line 38, which is also under line 27, we have the software requirements. The software requirements are for the licenses for the software. And then we have the telecom requirements in line 39. There we go. All right. And then we get to class line 50, which is the personal service temporary appointed. This is a big jump because this is the $30,000 stipend for 4 parole board members. So before I go over this line, I'd like to bring you to the supplemental materials to pages 2, 1 and 2. Let's start with page 2, because it shows you how we envision reconfiguring the parole board to fall into line with national standards and also to professionalize the board. Here in 651A3, we propose that the adult parole board should be brought down from 9. We're currently operating with 6 and have been operating with 6 for a very long time, almost as long as I've been here. I think we went from 7 to 6. We would like 5 members, 2 of whom shall be attorneys with active licenses. That can be the chairman and another lawyer, because one of our lawyers here needs to have a member with an active license, or can be a different member with an active license. It doesn't matter which members have the active licenses or who the attorneys are. We just need 2 attorneys. And that one of the reasons we do is because the statute requires us on Tuesdays to have an attorney for the board representing the board at the adversarial hearings, and also making the evidentiary and legal rulings, especially because motions and pre-hearing motions are allowed by our administrative rules. So 5 members, 2 of which shall be attorneys with active licenses, and they serve the same amount. The composition of the board shall be as follows: 1 member who is the chairman, 4 additional members to include a member of law enforcement or corrections, a member with law enforcement or corrections experience, current or former, a member with criminal justice experience through direct employment, current or former in some capacity with criminal justice system, or post-secondary school teaching, scholarship, and research pertaining to the criminal justice system. 1 at-large member who is either an attorney with an active license or a mental health professional with an active license, and 1 at-large member without any categorical designation. Currently, we have a former newly retired trauma surgeon, and also medical administrator and someone who has worked with the medical side of corrections previously. As one of our members, I was able to put his name to the governor, and he's doing a marvelous job, very important for our board. So with that adjustment to bringing us to a 5-member board, that we, by the way, have set at least 36 days of parole hearings and 36 days of revocation hearings. We aim to do more than that. That is, and it used to be, if you look, 24 days for the whole year for both types of hearings. Our workload has increased so much since the statute was written. So 36 days of parole hearings through those are the Thursday hearings, 36 days of Tuesday hearings, but we'd like to do more. Currently, what's preventing us from doing more? Staffing. And the fact that we are not fully digitized. In fact, we're hardly digitized. So we believe that the 30,000 is appropriate for the 36 days plus 36 days for 5 members of the parole board. This will allow us to diversify the board. We do not have a diverse board at the moment. We need to get more diversity on the parole board. It must be representative of the society, the community, and the carceral community as well, and must be professional. So we really have to try to cover a lot of ground here with the makeup of the parole board. As an aside, we'd ask that this language be taken out. The chairman shall report to the commissioner of the Department of Corrections. This is a conflict of interest. I have provided the Senate Finance Committee through Ms. Martone with a letter from the Attorney General's office opining that it is indeed a conflict of interest for me to report directly to the commissioner of the Department of Corrections. My current reporting is to the governor, and as a head of an agency, I should be reporting to the governor. So that we ask that this paragraph 3 be inserted as proposed instead of paragraph 3 as it was rewritten in the House. But we do ask that paragraphs 1 and 2 be passed as they have been passed in HB 2. I would ask also, once again, that my salary not begin on January 1st, 2022. And there is some explanation of this down here. I believe we're practically at the end. I just want to make sure that we go to, so what happened here was the House Division 1 Finance Committee reduced that $30,000 stipend to $20,000. It reduced it by $50,000. It made a mistake. If it wanted to reduce it the way it did, it should have reduced it by $40,000 because the chairman is a separate position. Yes, the chairman is a member, but paid differently, not by stipend. So at least the parole board should be getting that $10,000 back for those 2 years. However, here is my argument right here that I make for the difference between $20,000 and $30,000. And I would urge you to put in the $30,000 stipend. And by the way, the $30,000 stipend is without mileage. We have always reimbursed the members for mileage and for travel. If the $30,000 flat stipend were in place, it would be without mileage or any other remuneration. So we did ask if the Senate sees fit to recommend only the $20,000 stipend, that the mileage be reinstated and added back at $11,881 for in line 070 for 22 and 23. Then we have the benefits category. These are my benefits that get cut for the 6 months delay of my salary. I would urge you not to delay my salary. And that's the end of the document. I'm happy to take questions and thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? I do have one clarification. When you talked about the $30,000, can you clarify if that was for 5 members or 4 members?
It is for 4 members.
Okay, because you said 5. That's
yes. Actually, what happened is the House Division 1 Finance Committee thought it was 5 when it reduced. I'm sorry, I'm flashing. I hope I'm not giving you a headache.
That's okay. I understand that the 30,000 is for 4 members because it does not include the chair.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Do you experience any overtime?
No.
Okay. And currently the makeup of the adult parole board, all it says is just 9 members. There's no specification on experience or whatever?
There is not.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions? Seeing none, I think we're all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, members of the Senate Finance Committee. I really very, very much appreciate your time. I know we're asking for a major overhaul. The audit asked for a major overhaul, and I'm ready to do it. So this would be a great time for us to make New Hampshire a forerunner in parole. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
With that concludes our business for the day. We will meet again on Friday at 1 o'clock, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Senator Gaida, seconded by Senator Hennessy. Call roll. Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator Gaida. Yes. Senator Reagan. Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Senator Morse. Yes. And the chair votes yes, and we will be adjourned. Thank you for joining us today.